All right, so some stuff came out about the Browns over the weekend, the whole current situation with who's going to be where and what else is going to happen. Some rumors about some players maybe coming back, even some of the stuff there in the owners' meeting. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go over the news, talk about things a little bit. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, and look, man, I feel bad for Joe Thomas because I feel like Joe Thomas didn't mean for this to happen when he said it, but it happened when he said it. This was this ideal that Baker Mayfield had been offered about a $30 million a year contract and that he turned it down. Now, basically, what all this comes from is from speculation from 2020, right? That people thought that the Browns would offer around $30 million. And what happens in today's environment is there are people who have sources and report things that also aren't always reporting things, right? And that makes sense because you can't just report things nowadays. You have to have more to add, right? So now in addition to reporting things, people are also, writing opinion columns. And what happens a lot, and this happens in every field, in every city. I've seen it happen in wrestling a lot. I've seen it happen in every other sport, in every other city. What happens in those situations happens to be this. Sometimes a guy that people knows, or girl or woman that people know have information that not everybody has about the team, right? They have inside sources. They know people. Sometimes when they have an opinion, people automatically assume that that opinion has sourceable knowledge behind it and isn't just somebody speculating. And sometimes it is coming with some opinion with some information inside, but usually reporters source that kind of thing. And sometimes it's just, hey, I'm just speculating here, right? But no matter what, people are going to take that information as if it's a report when it's not. And that's what happened with the whole Baker Mayfield $30 million thing. I knew this had been false, that they had never offered Baker Mayfield a contract for a while, because people who are close to even Baker Mayfield's camp have maintained that that has never happened, right? The Browns have never offered that. And obviously people who are close to the Browns camp have maintained the same. And whenever you're trying to parse this out, right, especially the Baker Mayfield and Mary Kay drama, this is free game I'm going to drop on y'all. With certain players, you have to make sure you pay attention to certain people who report, right? Whenever it's something about Jarvis, Odell, Rashard Higgins, pay attention to Josina Anderson, right? That's who they usually go to. That's who their camp leaks things out to. Whenever it's something about Baker Mayfield, Jake Trotter is usually the guy to go to because he's from Oklahoma. He came from Oklahoma to cover the Browns when Baker Mayfield got drafted here in 2018. And in general, if it's coming from Mary Kay, it's coming from inside the building, from the front office or coaching staff, right? Like that's usually how these things parse out. Like, yeah, there is some overlap, right, with other reporters, but there needs to be some kind of consciousness of, hey, whenever you hear things from certain people, this is probably not 100%, but probably where these things come from. And this is one of those situations, right? Baker Mayfield, the whole thing came out that he was offered $30 million and turned it down. Now, this thing has been reported to be 100% false. And the reason I feel very confident that this is 100% false is Mary Kay on Twitter came out and said, yes, this is 100% false, full-blown erroneous. They never offered him a contract before the whole situation, or ever really, with Baker Mayfield. They never offered him a long-term contract. So when I hear from Mary Kay, I'm pretty sure that that's coming from official sources within the building. That's who Mary Kay has a ton of ties with. She's been in the city forever. There are people in that building that aren't necessarily involved in sole football operations that are still in the know, that Mary Kay has had relationships with over 20 years, right? Like that's how you know that's where that information is coming from. When it comes from Mary Kay, it's coming from within Berea. And now, if you're looking at the Baker Mayfield side of things, right, you look at this report, and this is from Jake Trotter, who, again, is the Oklahoma guy. He came with Baker Mayfield over from Oklahoma. You see this report over the years. Mayfield, according to multiple sources, has grown increasingly frustrated with the franchise that has made him the fourth quarterback in NFL history to play with 4 different head coaches in his first 3 seasons. After Mayfield led the Browns to their first playoff victory in 26 years, just 14 months ago, the team signaled last offseason that they were still unsure with the long-term answer, refraining from engaging in Mayfield's camp in extension talks. So that's from both sides of this, right? Somebody, I don't want to say made up, but maybe they were speculating about a certain situation, and then it just exploded into people just saying it. And it doesn't take much for people to believe lies on social media, because that's just what that thing's built for. But when it came to this situation, this is close to unequivocally false that you can get to, right? You got reporting that's probably sourced from one side of this argument and reporting that's sourced from the completely opposite side of this argument, both saying the same thing, that, hey, this never happened. The Browns never offered $30 million a year for Baker Mayfield. And there's a lot of reasons why you would understand that didn't happen, because if the Browns offered $30 million for Baker Mayfield, I would be surprised if they did not take it. But again, I'm viewing this in the lens of how I viewed Baker Mayfield in 2020. I don't know what their camp views Baker Mayfield as. They might think he's a top 5 quarterback. I've never thought he was a top 5 quarterback. I thought he could be around top 10, but never top 5. But hey, that's just my thoughts on that situation. But that's just a little lesson, I guess, as somebody who's been following this scene for a very, very, very long time, on how you can have a more educated navigation through this landscape. Is just understanding when certain things come from certain reporters, you're hearing it from certain perspectives most often, right? You're not really going to hear a lot of sourcing from players from Mary Kay, right? Because players, unequivocally, they don't trust Mary Kay, and they don't really reach out to Mary Kay in that way. Like, if they do, it's for a contract situation more than likely. But other than that, they don't really reach out to Mary Kay. They'll reach out to Josina. They'll reach out to other people, right? You'll hear it from other sources, maybe even sources you're a little bit less familiar with. I know Brad Stainbook on Twitter, he gets a lot of people, a lot of good sources that way too. So players, you're not going to really hear it from Mary Kay from players, but inside the building, that's where Mary Kay has her sources at. When you hear it from Jake Trotter, you're hearing it from Mayfield's camp, because that's who Mayfield's camp is keeping in touch with, right? So understanding that helps you navigate these things, right? Not everybody is talking to all the same people. Certain reporters are talking to different groups of people, and that's why different reporters will say different things, because honestly, they're not really reporting fact as much as they're reporting people's perspectives close to that situation. So once you understand that, it helps you navigate this, and maybe less people will see a tweet pop up and go, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Now, speaking on the Baker Mayfield Twitter front, another thing came up where people were freaking out because Ian Rappaport said that there is a scenario in which Baker Mayfield does start games in 2022. Now, I don't know why people made such a big ado about this. It made no sense to me that people made such a big ado about this. Is there a scenario in which Baker Mayfield could start in 2022? Yes. Is there a scenario in which he will be the starter for the Cleveland Browns in 2022? Yes. Is that scenario remotely likely? No. That scenario would include, and let's be clear here, Baker's the third option now, because if you heard how Kevin Stefanski was talking in his press conference, he was talking about Deshaun Watson. He was talking, and this is the one at the owners' meeting, not the press conference they just did in Perea. At the owners' meeting, Kevin Stefanski was talking about the quarterback room, and when he referred to Jacoby Brissett, he referred to him as a backup. As the backup. It's the backup position that we value a lot. We have a premium on that position. Jacoby's going to be a great backup for us. Okay, so that tells you everything you need to know, right? They're disregarding the possibility of Baker Mayfield even being the backup. That means that they're moving on from Baker Mayfield one way or the other. Is there a situation where somehow if Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson both get injured or taken out for the year, that then they might go to Baker Mayfield? Yes. Yes, in that situation, that would be where they would go. But other than utter disaster happening, which we're not going to wish on anybody, no, Baker Mayfield's not going to be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Like, this is in that 98.9% territory of like, hey, man, it ain't happening, right? So that's what that report was. I saw a bunch of people freaking out about that. Yes, it is. It is absolutely a possibility. It is also a possibility that I and Beyonce get married in 5 years. It can happen. It just ain't likely, right? Like that's the same level of possibility and scenario in which that all can happen, right? You know, it is possible. It's technically possible, but it ain't likely, right? All right, this next thing I want to talk about, speaking of possibilities, is one that has really captured the imagination of a lot of Browns fans, which is, hey, could we bring both of these guys back? Right now, the general assumption with Odell and Jarvis coming back is that their frustrations with the team was more about the quarterback play and it being poor, more so than it was about the offensive structure and the play calling. Now, a lot of the stuff that came out of Odell's camp wasn't really pointed at Kevin Stefanski as much as it was pointed at quarterback play, right? Like the video wasn't really an indictment on Kevin Stefanski that Odell's dad popped out. It was an indictment on the quarterback play, right? A lot of Odell Beckham Sr.'s comments that he had about the entire situation wasn't about Kevin Stefanski as much as it was about the quarterback play, right? Even with Kareem Hunt's dad, all of this has been focused on quarterback play. Now, some people are going to find that unfair. Some people are just kind of done with this whole situation. I don't blame people who are done with this whole situation for being done with the situation, but let's talk about the possibilities of why this could happen and why this couldn't happen. Now, here's why I think this could be something that could happen. Not saying that it will by any means, but this is why I think Odell coming back to Cleveland could happen, because I think his options are really, hey, do I sign with the Rams or do I sign with the Browns? Why do I think that's the case? Is because he's going to be spending the bulk of training camp, almost all of the regular season, rehabbing from an injury. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have rehabbed from a serious injury, and I don't know how many of you guys have done it to not just rehab to live normal life, but rehab to like live an athletic life. I have never had to do that, so I'm not speaking from experience here, but I am speaking from like what I have read about it. And that is a very intense process, right? Getting your ACL rehab to go out and play football again is a very, very time-intensive process. So if you're Odell, you don't want to then compound that with going to a new team, learning a new quarterback, learning a new offense, and adding all of those factors in. Even though he's capable of it, he did it last year with the Rams. You just don't want to add all that work on top of what you already have. So if I were Odell Beckham, and again, this is me speculating, not like saying anything. If I were Odell Beckham, I would have 3 options on my hands. Go back to LA, wait it out, see if you can get a spot. Come back to Cleveland, wait it out, see if a spot opens up for you, or just sit out the whole year, right? Do the Olivier Vernon, just sit out the whole year. Maybe once you're ready to go in December, you start leaking out that you're ready to go, and maybe teams can come take a look at you as like an offseason last piece, same way that you were last year with the Rams. But those are really the 3 options. I don't think he signs anywhere new. I don't think he signs a long-term, unless somebody's willing to give him like big money for 1 year. But I don't think he signs anywhere new. And when it comes to the financial situation with Odell, he got termination pay off of a $14 million contract last year and then got money on top of it. He's fine financially. He can sit out a year if he needs to. And I think that will probably be what's best for him, is to sit out this year. And I think that's probably going to be the most likely. I think it's likelier that he doesn't sign with anybody than he signs with the Rams or the Browns, but I think if he does sign anywhere, it's going to be with the Rams or the Browns, because in his situation where he's only going to be able to play in late December, more than likely, you're going to want to come back to a team where you know the offense, and he knows the offense in Cleveland and he knows the offense in LA. Like, you know that for a fact. That's not a big adjustment for him. They know what to do with him. They have a personnel package for him. Like, that's where it would be likely that he ends up if he signs with anywhere. So between those 2 teams, yes, but I think also it's a lot more likely that he just doesn't sign anywhere. Now, the Jarvis Landry thing has been interesting, right? Because the report, he switched agents, and then all of a sudden after he switched agents, a report came out that he was looking for $20 million. And I don't know where he's at. Look, this is the time of free agency where a lot of people are upset with their agents, right? Because they were expecting a certain amount of money and they did not get that amount of money, right? Think of Jadeveon Clowney was in the exact same situation last year where he thought he was going to get X amount of millions of dollars. He didn't. He signed with the Cleveland Browns in late April, right? And he ended up firing his agent over that whole fiasco. Jarvis Landry's in a similar situation where, hey, he thought he was going to hit the market in $20 million. I don't know where that number comes from per year. Like, I think that sounds like somebody trying to like make him seem unreasonable, right? But for Jarvis Landry, I bet he was expecting that he could get 10. And I bet all the offer sheets out there right now for him are somewhere between 6 to 8 millions per year, right? And a lot of them are short-term deals. And that's not what he was looking for. The hold up with the Browns when he was trying to get restructured with Cleveland was that the Browns weren't willing to add on that extra year. They just wanted to keep it at a 1-year deal, and they probably wanted to keep it anywhere from $8 to $10 million. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the reason he has fired his agent is because the Browns offered him in a restructure probably $8 to $10 million, and now all he can get is 4 to 6, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that gets your agent fired, is when you're offered something, you're advised to deny it, and then you lose money on that advisement. Like, that is something that loses agents' clients, and that makes you fire your agent. So I'm assuming that that's probably the situation that's going on. As far as him coming back to Cleveland, the door's wide open for him. They love him. He loves it here. And his family is still here, technically. Like, he hasn't sold his house yet. So I would expect that it could be likely. I think it all depends on two things. One, are the Browns more interested in bringing in Will Fuller than Jarvis Landry? That's something to look out for, because Will Fuller has a skill set that Jarvis Landry does not, and he has familiarity with Deshaun Watson that Jarvis Landry does not. But Will Fuller's injury history is much different than Jarvis Landry's injury history, because Jarvis misses very little games because of injury. Will Fuller has missed a ton of games with the injury. So that's something to look out for when you look at those two players. I think the Browns are only really going to offer one of these guys a contract. It's going to be interesting to see who that guy is. But again, this is the point in free agency where we wait for the next 3 weeks, because guys aren't going to be signed till at least after the draft or right before it, right? And that's where we're at. The same thing with Jadeveon Clowney. It's been reported the Browns have put out a $12 million per 2-year offer sheet for him. I expect him to take that. I think he's going to take that. I don't think anybody's going to offer more money than that, and I think he'll accept that probably within the coming weeks, but that's just my opinion on it. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves there. When it comes to Jarvis in this whole situation, again, it's a similar one to where, hey, the offer is going to be probably less than what they offered in the restructure. It's still going to be a 1-year deal, and it's going to be up to Jarvis to see if he wants to take that 1-year deal or if he can get a long-term deal somewhere else. I don't expect him to get a long-term deal coming off of his worst statistical season in quite a while. So I think that the odds that you can get him back are actually quite high, right? I don't think there's a big market for him right now, and I think the money's just right, or the money will be just right at the end of the day when it comes to Jarvis Landry, where you can get him right in that soft spot. And again, I think the Browns are waiting for some cap, what do you call it? When cap inevitabilities to happen. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce inevitable for whatever reasons. But they're waiting for some of these things to happen, right? That need to happen, that are more procedural than anything else. And yes, they technically do or will have that cap space that's on over the cap, but it's going to take a while till they actually have it in liquid asset form. So until they can actually spend it, it's going to take a while for them to get there. They have some things that are going to come off the books in June 1st. But again, long ride here, right, until the draft. So I think a lot of things are going to get handled probably before and a little bit after the draft here. When it comes to Jarvis and Jadeveon, and especially Odell, that stuff ain't happening for a while. I think Odell could go into the season before he signs anywhere. And what's the rush, right? What's the rush to get in? Yeah, if I'm for those situations, all three of them, the guys that we all want to bring back, or some of us wants to bring back, hey, I'm just going to say that it's going to probably take a while. But that's my thoughts on this whole situation. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. You guys have a great day. Have a good night.